Hello and welcome to Season 4 of the Sunday Podcast, presented by sportsshoes.com. I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
This podcast is all about elite distance running in the UK.
We're here to give you all the latest news updates around the sport,
as well as weekly interviews with athletes and coaches.
Stay up to date by following us on Instagram and X at Sunday Podcast.
And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel too, where we post athlete workout videos, shoe reviews and more.
Thanks for listening, and as always, we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, welcome back to another episode, slightly later than usual, kind of bringing this episode to you on a Sunday evening, and hopefully you've enjoyed British Champs this weekend. As you listen, obviously we recorded this episode slightly before we recorded it on Wednesday, so British Champs hasn't happened yet, but just to give you a heads up, we will be kind of providing a review of that midweek next week, so make sure you keep your eye out for that. Matt, though, Georgia Bell obviously on this week's episode for our guest portion, but there's quite a bit of news we need to get into first, mate.
Well, I think there is. I mean, yeah, it seems like a lot happened the last time we spoke, buddy. I mean, parkrun, God, that sent shockwaves through the sport. Yeah, I think with the whole, they basically with the whole stand on the transgender stuff, they just decided to scrap all former records, took the easy route. That one. And yeah, obviously a few people very disappointed that they have scrapped course records and age rating and all this. I presume, to be honest, mate, I'm not really a park runner myself. So I presume people will still get sent their time after the race. So I presume they still get that, but there just won't be a results and they won't keep a record anymore of who's done what.
Yeah, what's interesting is that all of it's still on. It's all still on Run Britain and Power 10 for kind of your athletes who have done it previously, who already have Power 10 profiles. You know, like not every park runner gets a Power 10 profile, but for everyone that actually is competing in the sport at that sort of, I don't know what level is required of Power 10, just doing a proper race, I guess. It's all still on there, the old stuff. I don't know if that's then going to get removed from their systems as well. So I guess not too much change really, apart from, like you say, the course record actually on the parkrun webpage. But I wonder how much if the results will still go on Run Britain, for example, in
Good
future.
point.
I don't know, not really sure. So.
Well, if I'm an athlete, it's probably a good thing because you can go do park runs under the radar now without people seeing your park run. And I mean, I don't know why, but I care. So I used to never scan my barcode ever at parkrun because I was just like, I don't care. I'll start my watch, I'll stop it. I don't care where I am on the results. But that's just me. That's probably my insecurities playing up there. But
whereas I used to peak for parkruns, so
yeah,
probably one of my
everyone
best
takes
races
it
ever
differently, right?
is
But
parkrun. So.
I actually saw Mark Cookway's tweet, and originally I was like, "Oh, it's a bit of a shame they got rid of course records." But let's think about it. The world records and stuff that was getting out of hand. A park run world record, is it really a thing? Every course is different.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not even 5K. It's not accurately measured. That hence why it's called park run. It's not official. It's not ratified. And obviously, it was people were seeking out crazy courses to go and run a great park run to almost like prove their shape when. Hookway made a very good point on Twitter and basically said, if you want to race, go do a proper race, an official race. Don't use a park run to kind of serve that purpose.
Yeah, that's it. And if you're doing a training run, they're still going to be there every Saturday. So you can still use it for your tempo or whatever you want to do. So it shouldn't make too much of a difference, should it, mate? But I guess just an interesting topic that's been kind of through Twitter this week, hasn't it?
Oh, it has. It has, and it probably shouldn't make that. It shouldn't send that many shockwaves through our sport at the elite end, but it did. But it shows kind of where it's come from. How far it's come because we I know even a lot of elites use it as a great training tool, and I think many moons ago it was almost frowned upon to do a park run. That was almost seen as like amateur status. You're an amateur runner, whereas now it is almost a norm. You go down to any local park run on a Saturday, and you've got someone there of high caliber taking it pretty seriously, drilling a tempo or drilling a park run because they want to smash a course record or something like that. So I think it's done wonders for the amateur level and the kind of hobby joggers, but it's also done a lot for those at the pointy end of the sport as well, because I think it is easy if you are looking to get back into shape and just to have a rust buster. It's such a good tool. So obviously it's still going to be there, and everyone can still use it for that purpose. But it's just not going to be times which, in anything, I think in the long run, that would probably be a better call. But yeah, I wasn't too fussed either way. Like I said, I'm not a crazy park runner myself, and don't think anyone involved in the sport properly should care too much.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously you mentioned it is good for, good tool for people getting back into the sport. And obviously we mentioned we got Georgia Bell on this week, and that's something she spoke about too. So look out for that bit later on in the episode. Some I think people thought parkrun was sad news, but for kind of some real sad news. Obviously the passing of Kelvin Kipton from a car crash, and obviously like a real shame that we've seen what three of the fastest marathons ever from this guy. And then
Mm.
obviously we won't see it. We won't see that anymore, and see how kind of far his career could have gone. But I think it was something that definitely shocked a lot of people too.
Oh, mate, I mean, it came so unexpected, didn't it? Was it Sunday
Mm,
night? The news got announced. I was, getting into bed and saw the news after what was such a high at Milrose Games. Literally moments after Josh Kerr setting world records, and to see that, and obviously Kipton as well with the Rotterdam kind of setup race that was going to take place at the Rotterdam Marathon, how he's going to attack that sub 2 hours in a legit
mm.
way. I think it is very sad. But yeah, so the sport has lost a very talented athlete. Mhm.
Okay, let's get into British champs then, mate, because I think that's probably the main one. And for those of you listening, you'll be able to enjoy listening to our predictions, knowing that most likely we probably got these very, very wrong, but we'll give them to you anyway now to see how close we got. Because I think I mentioned on the podcast last week that actually there was maybe not much to race for, or maybe it was a bit weak, but actually we got some pretty strong fields throughout some of the events anyway, at least. Matt, should we start women's side and start on the 800, and then we'll just work our way up.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, women's 800, I think is it's a bit of a done deal for me. I mean, you look at someone like Riki's presence at a domestic level, how many times she's been there, how many times she's won at national championships. She's racing well, she's winning races on the tour. She's going to be up against Boffy and Baker. But for me, she's comfortably got the better of them two right now at this moment in time. Looking at her results and the way and the level she's operating at, she's almost just like that notch above those girls. And look, Riki's good indoors as well. She's really good indoors. So for me, I think Riki's getting back to her best, and I think she takes that women's 800 runaway victor easy.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, mate. I think she wins it any way she wants, to be honest. I'd imagine Buffy will probably try and make it quick, but I can see Riki doing it like however she wants to. And I think, like you mentioned, she is probably a caliber above the other two. Not anything against them, but I think she's just a bit of a kind of level above, like you say. Over to the 1500. Obviously, we've got our guest for this week, Georgia Bell, in that. I'm sure a lot of people looking forward to seeing how she gets on, making her return to the sport, and what is probably. I think, well, we said on the podcast, definitely her first championship race in a number of years.
Oh, mate. Yep. I mean, after this podcast, I'm sure I hope by the time people are listening to this, that Georgia Bell's crowned British champion. That's going to get us a lot of listens. Perfect timing. But no, I just think honestly, again, it's kind of another one. Looking at the way she's been racing, she's unbeaten. In 2024, she's been beating world-class athletes on the tour, and most importantly, she's already beat Rebe in a race where she led the whole way. So, she won that from the front and still held Walcott Nolan off. So honestly, I think and I guess her next competitor will be someone like Sarah McDonald. And I think by the time you're listening to this, it'll be done and dusted anyway. I think Georgia Bell will be a British champion.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that again. And then over to the 3K, I think this one again, whilst this is a pretty strong field, some strong girls in there. I think we got to say, especially after that 2 mile record the other day, and Milrose Laura Muir expected to return to the UK to contest the British champs. Will probably well almost undoubtedly wipe the floor with that 1500 with that 3K field. Sorry, but obviously we saw outdoors last year against Katie Snowden that she's not unbeatable.
She's not unbeatable, but I feel like after watching her race at Milrose and again, the level she's at compared to, Courtney Bryant. I think Muir wins this hands down. And even like people like there's in the women's 3K, there's a good battle for second and third. I think Hannah
Mhm.
Nuttall, Courtney Bryant, you got Markov in there as well. There's going to be a really good battle for second and third and those medals. But interestingly, someone who's actually not in that women's 3K who I thought we would see was Ellie Leather. Obviously, after the racing she's had this indoor season, and her good time in Boston last week. But yeah, I think Muir she wins this comfortably again. So we're either going to sound very stupid, but I think it's fair to say if anyone looked at these start lists, Riki Bell and Muir for me over the last 2 months are clear favourites on the rest of the field.
Yeah, and for once we agree with each other as well. So that's always I don't know if that's a
Mm.
good sign or not. Over to the men's then, and the men's 800. Fair to say, and nothing against any of the athletes in it. Probably the weakest event that we've got, just in terms of not seeing many, if any, of our top internationals outdoors contesting this one. But we do have Guy Learmonth in there who has proven time and time again that he's a classy indoor runner. And I don't know how many British indoor 800 titles he's won now, but it must be quite a few.
Yeah, I go on there actually. We should probably stat check that. Yeah, I mean, Callum Dodds is in there. I think you're right. All our best 800 runners. I mean, Rowden has dabbled with the indoors, but he's not due to line up. All our best 800 runners seem to be, we haven't even seen them. Giles usually good indoors, chose to, I think he had an injury. He's passed the whole season. Obviously Bergin and Rowden and Patterson, those guys, again, not even, I mean, Patterson and Bergen not even stepping on an indoor track. So they're all saving themselves for outdoors. And I think it's because I think they're going to want to do European Championships in early June. And so they're going to need to get the ball rolling early May. And indoors probably just trying to peak twice in 8 weeks like that when you're already going to have a long season with Europeans and Olympics, a lot of major championships coming. I think it's probably the right call from the level those guys are at. So and someone like Alex
Yeah.
Bottle as well, chuck him into the equation. There's a whole host of them, isn't there? Ethan Hussey.
I also just think the way the 800's going, it seems anyway. I feel like we're seeing more and more 800 guys and girls who are doing more training, like more endurance based training, and then dropping down to the speed. Because I think if you're a 4.8 kind of runner, you're 800 indoors, and in the winter you're not changing your training too much. But coming from all this kind of the threshold work, for example, that we know the eight guys are doing, dropping down then to run 800 pace stuff is a massive change. Whereas 1500 guys could do their normal winter, for example, and then maybe drop down 4 weeks of bit of race pace stuff indoors, you're fine. But I think that the toll on the body of dropping down to having to run 50 for 400 through the first lap, for example, or getting close to, is a massive change from maybe how their training's going. That's my speculation anyway. I don't know the ins and outs of all
Yeah,
their
and I
training,
think
but
they can't afford any injuries or niggles, and
mm,
I think if you have an injury or niggle, you then can't afford a mediocre indoor season because I think the one thing you don't want to do going into Olympic year is knock your confidence and put yourself in a bad spot at a bad position. When you're looking at getting into races and all this political stuff that these athletes at this level actually have to consider, they have to think about. But mate,
mm,
we've gone off topic here. Sorry, predictions. Limont for the win. I think that's probably fair. I
yeah.
said last week, like, yeah, he has run 146 already this year, which is pretty much the fastest. I mean, Callum Dodds is an outside shot as well. He's run a 600 already this year. So yeah, probably between one of those two. And actually looking at the field, I probably have to lean towards Limont more. But yeah, there's some good guys in there. Expected to be one in 147 high, I think.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I think again, I'd agree with that. And then over to the men's 15. I think there's a good battle in here, but I think the way Adam Fogg's running, he's in super good form. But Callum Elson in there as well. I think they're the two to look at, and we just seen how he's been able to kind of take to this next level on the cross. And I think he's going to bring another level as well over the 1500. So just super interested to see how that battle goes. And he's obviously done as a great racer, rises to the competition as well. So I don't think it's going to be a complete Fog Dog show, but I would tip him for the win there.
Yeah, agreed. It is yeah. Looking at the, I mean, you're counting out Piers Copeland. I don't think you can count him out with his kick. Um, so I think for
Yeah,
me, yeah, for me it's Copeland, Fogg, and Elson, and but I do think Fogg is he's very good over 800. He's better than both of those over the longer distances as well. And yeah, so I think Fogg wins it as well.
yeah, I think so. I think it'll be good to see Copeland back, and if he can battle with O2, that's a great starting point to kind of, like you mentioned last week, get back to some of his previous form. But I think just yeah, Fogg's been racing on the US circuit a bit, like he's kind of in one of them high tech training groups, if you like. But yeah, super interested to see how Elson gets on against him, coming off that kind of great run at Liverpool back in November. So
Mm.
just stepping up and stepping up as he always seems to do.
Mm. Oh yeah. And then finally men's 3K, let's predict that. That's a tough one. I think I said last week how many guys are within probably 3 or 4 seconds of each other, and there's 20 plus of them in this race. By the time you're listening, you would have seen it all go down, but I think it's going to be absolutely carnage. I think there's going to be some very talented people far down the field just because of the sheer number. It's one of the best I guess domestic fields I've seen in an indoor 3K in a long time. So many men in that field are capable of sub 8 minutes. Usually that 3K you get 3 or 4 good athletes and it tends to get a little bit watered down
Mm.
further down the field. Whereas this time, I think you've almost got 20 guys who have a PB of inside 8 minutes over 3K. So I wonder how that race is going to go. Again, by the time you listen, you would have seen it. You're gonna go for the wheelers 1, 2. I think for me with Westie's 5K the other night, that's probably the fastest 5K in the field. And I think he obviously is by far and away the best 1500 guy in the field. So I'm still going to stick with James West for the win. And he's going to be a double back to back British champion.
Yeah, I think definitely, obviously, kind of looking out for my good friends Charlie and George Wheeler as well. In that prediction, I think it'll be a good race. I think Westy, obviously, like you say, he's super accomplished over the 3K. Like it's almost his best event. I think if it was an outdoor event, that's the one he'd try and contest. At the Olympics for sure. But yeah, he ran at 13:19, but Charlie Wheeler just half a second behind him over in Boston over that 5K. So strength wise, they're pretty similar. I think if the Wheeler twins work together and they make it hard um, for everyone rather than kind of leaving it to a sitting kick, I definitely think they can do some damage on Westy though. But I think those three for me looking super strong at the moment.
Look, we've been wanting the Wheelers to do a job at one of these major champs for a little while now, so I hope they do. Because yeah, they're up and coming, and I hope they can kind of really push on in this sport. I know they're in a tough position right now. It's like so many people to think you can run 13:19 and be unsponsored and in full-time work, but that kind of links us to Georgia Bell and what she's up to. But before we get into that, Lum, I mean Boston delivered again. Like we've already mentioned, yeah, Elson running quick, Ellie Leather running quick, lots of people running quick. But for me, obviously the big talking point, Milrose Games, we've got to talk about Josh Kerr. Muir as well, but Kerr, he he just doesn't put a foot wrong. And what must Jakob be thinking? The guy talks about this race 2 months ago, says what he's going to do, and he actually goes and delivers. And I think if I'm Jakob sitting at home injured or returning from an injury, whatever he's up to right now, surely you're thinking, well, the one thing I had over this guy was I was a damn sight a lot better than him over 3K, over 5K.
Mm,
Kerr is closing that gap. And in an 800, Kerr wins comfortably over Jakob. So
yeah.
it's, I think the Olympics is Jakob is talking. I almost think Jakob is responding. The media are asking him about Kerr. For me, he's talking out of fear. He feels like he needs to say something back, and I just think Kerr is walking the walk right now, and he's in a very strong position.
Yeah, and Kerr's such a confidence guy as well. Like you see it when we interview him, you see it when he does other interviews. Like it's all over his social media. The guy like gets better off his own confidence and his own performances, and the way he's running at the moment, the way he ran in the summer. Uh, he's he's got to be people's favorite right now. I think it's going to be such a good battle though. It is so good for the sport that they're going a bit back and forth because like whatever you say about Jakob, like him coming back and putting him in the mix then, come Paris, it just lines it up for a brilliant Olympics because we don't want the kind of it to be a runaway show. We want it to be a close race. Of course, we want Josh Kerr to win from a British perspective, but we definitely want it to be close and we want it to be kind of give us some surprises as well, don't we?
Mm. Oh, we do. Oh, we do. But men's want to make a mile as well. George Mills and Fogg and a lot of people speculate and go, oh, what could Mills have run? Mills would have won that had he not sort of tripped. But I'm like, but that is why I love to watch races like Milrose Games, like that over Boston where they're in single file and at Boston maybe Mills doesn't make that move because he's
Yeah.
like, I'm on for a cracking time. I'll leave it to the last 50 meters or so as I want to make him are, he's forced into racing. He's making split decisions, and obviously that decision just slightly cost him. He got clipped and had faded a little bit, and then the goose ran away. I mean, people are the goose was good, but I still don't think he's an Olympic champion.
No, I think it's just classic. Like anyone who wins a US trials, like I think people just seem to forget the rest of the world exists sometimes. But yeah, obviously phenomenal
Honestly, think
athlete.
Cole Hawker. I think Cole Hawker and Kubatir will make the Olympic team.
Yeah, now they're back with their old
Yeah, you
coach.
don't need to
Well,
be
not
running
Cole,
that
but
fast. You don't need to be running that
yeah.
fast in February.
So, but yeah, it's like you say, it's the reason why we race. Like trips happen. Any other sport, like that's what we look at. We're not just looking for time trials. So yeah, so hard to say, but good to see people running quick and nice to see Milrose Games going well because I do think it's probably the premier event on the indoor calendar for sure.
Mm.
Let's get into some of the road races though, Matt, because a few people were running, and obviously we had Mark Scott in there, his first race under Chris Jones, and prepping for London Marathon too.
Yeah, 62 minutes in change. In low, I think when I spoke to him before, he wanted sort of 61 mids. It was a blustery old day in Barcelona, so I think he'll be relatively happy with it. Um, I think the good thing for us is it's obviously plenty quick enough, isn't it? Heading into trying to run 2:08, 2:8:10. So he's definitely fast enough to do it. But I think the one question mark you potentially have over Mark Scott is the fact that one, he's ever done a marathon, and two, his conversion, like you presume will get worse. You know, he's running 62 low off of he's a very fast 5K guy. He's a very fast 10K guy. So his
Mm,
speed is his strength. So the further he goes, potentially the more that drops away. So yeah, I think London, when he does it is going to be fantastic. Bleep that
yeah,
bit out. Can't
he's
announce
gonna.
that he's doing London yet.
He has, hasn't he? He's announced that he's doing it. No.
No, we've announced, but London haven't announced. And to be
Oh,
fair, on
okay.
that, London haven't announced their fields full stop. They're being very slow. I've heard rumors that Sefa, the world record holder, 2:11 in Berlin, that record is still not ratified, people. To put it into perspective, Kipton's Chicago record was after Berlin. That's already been ratified.
Mm,
Sefa's record at Berlin hasn't been ratified. The London fields were supposed to be announced last week. They've now been delayed. What's going on? Maybe put two and two together. I'm not sure if she's due to run or not, but yeah. But we'll talk about Jess Judd and her 67 low as well.
yeah, and obviously we spoke to Jess recently, and she said she was kind of going to go back to that half marathon that she normally does this time of year, and it's always good. Like yeah, I don't think the half marathon's not her focus, but you're running a 67-minute half marathon. It's always a good sign. Ahead of the summer and ahead of a 10K, like you got that strength. She doesn't need to worry about that now, and she can just focus on actually getting ready to go. Like she's run that time in Valencia, she backed up with a half. Expect Jess Judd to make another big jump and continue running well this season. I think after the blip that it was a bad call from us that we made in December.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. We got that horribly wrong. And we hold our hands up to that as well. So, yeah, looking forward to. it's going to come around very, very quickly. That 10K early March. Yeah, it's going to be same weekend as I think it's going to be same weekend as World Indoors, is it? Or maybe a few days after. So we've got again a busy few weeks, and actually just in general, it is getting very difficult. And we apologize. I apologize if we miss anything in the sport. It's getting very difficult right now to follow. I mean, I know a lot of people are moaning about Milrose Games. The stream was hard to find. It was hard to watch. I always thought it was on YouTube and then it's on the World Athletics website. So if you are wanting to watch the World Tour, they seem to be on the World Athletics website now. To head over there, and we're people in the know, and it is quite difficult. And there seems to be so much going on. The evening before Milrose, obviously we have a fantastic meet in Lieven in France, and another World Tour. And goodness me, I mean Segai misses the world record by a fraction of a second. Germer as well, running scarily fast times over 2K and 3K, the pair of them. So if you haven't sort of caught the results for that one, it was a great meet as well. And the Ethiopians just seem to be bloody ruling the track world at the moment when it comes to these distance races. You see 4 or 5 of them, they go 1 to 4 in these 3Ks and 1500s and whatnot indoors. But and then of course that weekend there was Boston. There's bloody cross country league matches. There's Armagh. There's just everything. It's crazy right now. And we are spoilt, but at the same time, I always say it's such a hard sport to follow with fixtures. Someone's always running somewhere else. And people are never in one place, are they? So, but should we should we start to build into this Georgia Bell episode?
Yeah, let's get into it. But on that, Matt, hopefully, just for those of you listening, that's what we're providing you with. Hopefully, we're providing you with kind of a roundup that includes most, if not all, of kind of the main British performances to look out for. With that, if there's any races that you really want us to cover that you don't expect us to, just send us a message. I know we've had a few people recently that have asked us to cover certain events, etc. So feel free to reach out if there's something that you think might be interesting for us to talk about. But yeah, let's get into that Georgia Bell episode. Obviously, you mentioned throughout that she's someone who's having a fantastic indoor season at the moment. Unbeaten so far in 2024. I'd imagine, from our predictions, that's going to be the same, even though this is coming out after British champs. But we won't jinx it there. So we'll see how she's got on. Hopefully, though, we can announce this, and I can change that description in the episode to say the British indoor champion for 2024. But regardless, I think a great comeback that she's making anyway, and just yeah, let's get straight into that episode because she talks about how basically kind of the pause in her career from being an English schools champion as a junior to what she's doing now. So enjoy the episode. Okay, first off, Georgia, just welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on. And we wanted to just say congrats. I think you're unbeaten so far this season. So how are you finding it all at the moment?
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks very much for having me on. I have to say, I'm actually a listener of you guys, so I was very happy to get the message to say join the Monday morning run, easy. The trainers go on and the Sunday podcast goes on. So good to be here. And yeah, no, thank you. It's been a crazy season so far. The most exciting bit to come, I think, hopefully this weekend and over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, it's been I have to correct you though, actually. I did do a race in December
Okay.
where
Oh, I know about it. I know about it. Yeah.
so technically I don't think I'm unbeaten this season, but 2024, 4 races, 4 wins. So that's
But
yeah.
the race in December technically it's not on your World Athletics profile, is it? Because the whole, I mean, Laura Muir's obviously found this. It wasn't ratified as a World Athletics event or something like that. So
Yeah, bizarre. Which yeah, I'm not sure. So I mean I'll take
yeah.
it. Sounds better.
Well, look, before we, dive into your campaign at the moment and how well you're running, let's just rewind because I think you've got a fantastic story in the sport that, a few people who are seeing you now probably haven't really heard of you over until the last 6, 12 months. So look, I mean, you did win English schools a long time ago, 2008 now. And interestingly, you were a bit of, I guess you were just an English schools champion. I guess, you were a bit of a superstar, but at that age, but English schools champs come and go, don't they? He didn't improve until 2013. I just want to know, and then you ran another PB, and then again you had like a period where you didn't improve. So what was your relationship like with running at that young age, especially young teens?
Yeah, Definitely. So you're, I think, exactly right. Got into running through school and basically just came quite naturally and really enjoyed it and had good success when I was younger. So I was the top ranked under 15 and under 17 for
Mm.
800 meters, I think. So like the foundations were there. But then I just kind of didn't really either achieve my full potential, I think, or work hard enough through those teenage years. And that kind of showed with the results not translating, like I wasn't keeping either running faster times or doing those same positions at championships. And then I went over to the US for college in my master's years. And yeah, a bit all over the place, I guess. But I think what I'm trying to say is was a good youngster, had some complicated teenage years, I guess, and then now I've come back to it, and weirdly, I'm just running better than I ever have.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that you maybe didn't try hard enough or train hard enough in those ages because I think a lot of the people that we see that have kind of performed really well as youngsters, they almost kind of look back and say they overtrained at that age, and that's what led them to kind of taking some time out. What do you think the case was with you then?
I think it was just maybe I'm being a bit harsh on myself, but I just think that I started running and it went well straight away. So I just kind of thought that, this is something that I'm potentially quite good at. And then almost when it got hard and the tougher things came, like you have your first injuries or you don't do so well in races, it was almost like a a big drop. Whereas other people who might come to it and not have that success at first, and then they work for it and they achieve it, I don't know, it's a bit more satisfying, maybe.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, not too sure, but that was just my experience as a youngster. Now I wish, now my motivation is totally different. Like I wish I had the mindset and the drive and the motivation I have now. I wish I had that when I was younger. But better late than never, I guess.
Well, absolutely. And we'll get on to that. But you always stayed involved in the sport,
Mhm.
didn't you? So you were still kind of training and stuff, and obviously you went to Birmingham and you had good success at Birmingham for a year or two, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So I went to Birmingham Uni for my undergrad and great university for
Mm.
track. I wasn't really running too much in that first year. Like I think I did Bucks cross country and I did do some bits and bobs, but it was in the second year that I started to really get back to running faster times. Um, that aligned with being coached by my current coach now, who's Trevor Painter. So in my second year, he kind of started coaching me remotely, and then just saw a really big change in results within like a couple of months. So, yeah, had some years where I was kind of training but not racing, and then that second year of uni got back into
Mm.
racing, which then kicked off the whole scholarship opportunities for the US for the following years.
Mm. After the US, then talk to us about what you're doing because you spent some time doing duathlon as well, and things like that. Talk about your relationship with the sport then.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually, when I finished my collegiate career out in the US, I just stopped running for
Mm.
a while. So I think there probably was a good like 3 or 4 years of might have gone for a run, but definitely not racing. I think once I finished my collegiate career, I was so done with running. I never thought I'd come back to it. Don't think I went for a run for about 6 months. Just very mentally and physically burnt out. And then over the past kind of 3 or 4 years, I've got into cycling, started it in lockdown, really as a way to avoid injury because I had started running again, going for runs, but I'm quite a low mileage athlete. Pretty much as soon as I run over 30 miles a week, I start to get niggles. So we always keep it under that. And cycling was just a really good way to get some cardio in without having an impact. And yeah, that just mixed into duathlons, realized that that was an event that you could do mixing the two. And that's what I've been doing over the past couple of years, which has actually just had a big impact, I think, on my fitness. So yeah, quite random, but I think a lot of people have got into cycling over the lockdown period as well.
Mm. You say interesting. You say you were so done with the sport. What was it about the sport you hated at that moment in time enough to just kind of completely walk away?
Yeah, like I do love running so much as a sport, but I
Mm.
think I think lots of athletes can relate that it can be really frustrating. And the phase that I was in then was that I had experienced success when I was younger. I hadn't had PB for years.
Mm.
I was training but not getting results. And just overall, I just thought I've given so many years to this and I'm not enjoying it anymore. I'm not excited to race. I'm not I just didn't have the love for it that I once had. And it was probably the best thing that I could have done rather than trying to keep going with running, just have a complete
Mm.
break. Just went into the working world. And then now, how I've come back to it, I just have such a different perspective. I really love it. I so look forward to racing. And who knows if I just tried to keep slogging along there, tried to go for professionally, I just don't think I would have had that same perspective.
Mm.
Mhm. During those years when you're kind of taking some time out, and obviously you mentioned you started cycling during lockdown and stuff.
Mhm.
At what point did you start thinking actually you want to kind of take some sport kind of competitively again? Because I presume when you started cycling, it wasn't, oh, I want to be a cyclist, for example. And obviously you
No.
could have gone down that triathlon route as well, because that might have seemed more appropriate at that time as well.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, good old park run, really. I think I just did a park run, and because park run is just so measurable, like I think I just did like a 16:30 5K at park run, and I was like, that's actually not that bad, like on the grass. Like maybe I should try and go to a track. And I never thought I'd go back to running on the track, but I live around Battersea. I knew that they always do events at that track and just still have lots of friends with them running. And they just said, oh, you should just do this race. It's coming up. Like you probably run close to 16 minutes. And so then going back into that environment, that was really weird because it was my first track race in I don't know how many years. But I just got all of the old like competitive juices flowing. Like I was back. I had the excitement to race again, like that feeling back. And just kind of been obsessed with that ever since. So that was a couple of years ago. And yeah.
In many ways, I just think we're so lucky that endurance running, distance running is a sport that you can dip in and out of like you've done because there's very few sports you can just, yeah, go for a park run, have a good indication of shape, and then just jump straight in a race. And then from there, I presume it just snowballed. I mean, when was it that you reached back out to Trevor and you started to think, do you know what, I need a bit more structure?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to go back and look at the timeline. But I think I did a park run, yeah, 2020, and then 2022. No, beginning of 2023 is when I reached back out to Trevor. So it was literally back a year ago. So I did a few after that park run and after that 5K in Battersea. I was like, okay, I'm going to sign up to a few BMCs again,
Mm.
get back on the kind of UK circuit a little bit. Um, did some 5Ks mainly. That was a bit more manageable in my mind because I hadn't done 5Ks before on the track. So I was like, oh, anything will just be a PB, surely. Slowly that went down to like a mile, and then I ran like a 4:33 mile just on my own, going for runs, going for cycles. And that's when I got back in touch with Trev and said, I've kind of done this on my own. What do you reckon about us kind of working together again? And yeah, I've been doing that now for just over a year and it's going really well.
Wow.
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
talk us like a bit more in depth about that sort of training then? Because you mentioned obviously you're just going for a few runs and a few cycles, but I think people be interested to know what that actually looked like. So how kind of little were you doing when you're still able to run sort of a low 16-minute 5K, for example?
Yeah, so I wouldn't recommend that like I'm a coach or anything like that. I just tried to I just knew my body well enough at this point that I knew I couldn't do loads of training miles. So for me, I was like, I need to have a good mix of going for easy runs, and then I'd do at least 1 or 2 runs a week where I really went for it. So whether that was just like a 2 mile all out round Clapham Common or just doing some kind of fast tempo bits within a run. And again, I guess that's still kind of the competitive nature in me. Like I still wanted to do that. I still wanted
Mhm.
push myself a bit. And then equally with cycling is the same. Like there'll be some rides where we go out where we're just chilling, going for a long ride, and then there'll be rides where we're going all out for 2 hours. Like I have a group that I go out cycling with, and there are rides where we know going into it, it's going to be no talking, just a chain gang. And I think it's just a mix of that high intensity and then really easy days that got me into decent enough shape. But I much prefer following a plan, which is like what I've got now, and having some people to train with.
So, bottom line is you just kept it super, super simple,
Yeah, yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
I was just gonna say, with the cycling, were you not kind of tempted to see how far you could go in that? And you were riding with people. Were you, when did, I presume now cycling is more kind of just a supplement to support running. But at one point, were you trying to improve? Were you trying to get better and better at cycling as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I like did the World Triathlon Championships last year and won. So that and I loved
Wow.
that kind of racing. So um that is really exciting and I do want to continue doing that. But I just think now with the Olympics coming up this summer and the goalposts are really changing for us. Like when we started training together, as in Trev and Jen with the coaching, we didn't think that we would have this much improvement in such a short period of time, really. And now I just think we want to focus on that.
Mm.
So it's a short window, I guess, till the summer. And there's always a risk with cycling that you can come off your bike and things like that. So just got to be careful with racing and yeah, lots of opportunities happening on the track. So kind of seems
Mm.
like that's going to be the focus for the next at least 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. So obviously you're kind of hinting at Paris there. Where at what point did that sort of become a realistic goal for you?
Yeah, it's so crazy even saying it then because I did a podcast probably like 3 months ago and I would never have said it then.
Wow.
And now it's just changed so much. I mean, just looking at from the time standpoint, I'm like half a second off the qualifying time, and all the races that we've done so far have basically me been kicking on my own. So I just feel like the right race, and the next 4 or 5 months to run it, that should be something that's achievable. And yeah, I think the big turning point for me was I went to South Africa for 10 days in November, and that was kind of a bit intimidating going into it because everyone there's a pro athlete. Like I'm definitely not. I've got a full-time job. Knew that training had been going pretty well, but actually being able to go there and see that I could mix with some of those amazing girls that are running insane times, that gave me a whole new perspective of like, actually, this is possible. Um,
Mm.
and, the coaches just told me what they think I can run. And then I just went into races with that mindset. And luckily, it's been going well.
Yeah.
So
Must
obviously Paris is slowly becoming a bit of a reality now, but and World Indoors, Glasgow, we'll talk about that. But what was the initial goal? I just want to know that obviously you started working with Trevor. You
Mhm.
improved so quickly, but what was the initial goal? Was it to run a PB? Was it to get back
Yeah.
down to 2-3? That was it.
Literally that. So when we first started talking, he said, "Okay, great. Like, let's target British champs." And I said no because I just thought, "Oh no, I don't want to do that. I just want to see
Mm.
how fast I can run." And I regret that. Like, I should have gone to British champs last year, especially because people this year are just like, "Who's Georgia Bell? Like, where has she come from?" People that have been in the sport for a while, I think, do know, but I guess because I wasn't on anyone's radar last year, and now it's a bit different. But yeah, I just started wanting to see how well I can do, but I think ultimately racing is really fun. And if you're fit, then going to championships is something you should definitely do.
Mm.
Yeah, and it must fill you with confidence, obviously, with Trevor and the work he's done with Keeley over the past few years, and everyone, of course, knows about that. Just wanted to chat about how much has your kind of schedule changed? Then you mentioned you're working full time as well. Like, how much has being coached by Trevor Painter and the schedule I'm sure you're kind of doing for your training impacted upon your life, and how do you arrange all that?
Yeah, it's a lot. Um, the social life is just basically falling off a cliff, but it's just I work a 9 to 5, but luckily most of it is working from home, which makes a huge difference. So I can go out before work and run and in the evenings cycle or vice versa. So um it's just a busy schedule and I just have been doing it now for like a year, so I've just made it work. But as things get closer to the summer, things might change slightly. There's lots of conversations going on at the moment. So yeah, well, maybe we'll have a conversation at the end of the summer.
Mm.
Something a
Mm.
bit.
Yeah, no, I heard a few things. So I hope kind of it all goes ahead, and I hope you're in a position where you can, go a little bit more full time with the running. But I think for us as well, we just want to know. We know that obviously you do a large part of your training is cross training, but what does Trevor's training look like? What are you doing on a weekly basis? What have you been doing the last few weeks to
Yeah.
get back into this world class shape?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a whole bunch of athletes, and every
Mm.
athlete is different. I'm a 1500-meter runner slash 5K runner, so my training is going to look different to Keely's, for example. But we are on the track twice a week, and then we'll also do something on the road on a Tuesday. So a mixture of, for me personally, just when I go for a run, they're always easy runs for recovering for hard track sessions. Um, and yeah, recently it's been mixing it up with lots of practice for change paces for championship racing. And yeah, actually just doing a lot more speed work recently, which now I think means that we're gonna probably do some 800s in the outdoor season. So that's gonna be really weird because it'll be like 7 years since I did a 800. But that was just a workout that we did the other day that we were just like, yeah, it's probably time to go
Mm.
and do 800s now.
Have you been surprised you know, how your speed is in such a good place? For don't want to mention your age, Georgia, but typically, the 800 and stuff, it is, when you're 22, 22, 24, the speed comes so easy, but you've managed to have time off the sport where you've completely neglected that system. And clearly now you are back and your speed is better than ever. So have you been surprised how you've been able to improve that and get that back to the level it is?
Yeah, definitely. Like it is something that I think with even my first coach, we were speaking earlier about Steve Mann, like he did a really good job of keeping the speed when we were younger. And it's just always something that I have always thought is important. So even when that period of time where I was, kind of not following a plan, when I'd finish a run, I would make sure that I do 3 or 4 strides as fast as I can. So like I'm always conscious of not
Right.
losing that speed. Um, and yeah, that's because I'm doing lower volumes. It means that we need to make sure that the track work is really high quality rather than kind of miles on miles on miles where people build fitness that way. So, yeah, it is, I guess it is surprising, but I guess it's always been there. I don't know if
Mm.
that 800 foundation just from doing that really young meant that it came back more easily. So yeah, maybe that's why. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I mean, in terms of just the age and stuff, there's so many women in the sport that
Mm.
are kind of around my age that are
Mm.
really speedy, like Katie Snowdon, Laura,
Mm.
Melissa, Reve, like there's a lot. So I think it's one of the things with endurance and like triathlons and duathlons is actually a lot of those women are usually the ones that are really successful are usually a little bit older.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, speedy girls on the track there. they're not too far away in age.
Yeah, for sure. But one thing I wanted to ask you, like as a young runner, did you believe you'd be where you're at now? Maybe not the career path it took to get there, but did you always kind of think that you'd get there somehow?
Yeah, I think this is going to sound so cringe. When I was younger, I did feel like running was something that just clicked. Like I felt like I was enjoying it, was good at it, and just felt like sessions would just come naturally. And so I do think that I always thought I would grow up being a runner. There were definitely some years in between when, I just stopped completely, where I'd look back and be a bit nostalgic and say, oh, what could have been, especially at the last Olympics. There were so many photos of like Alex Bell, Katie Snowdon
Mm.
going around, and I've just got so many photos of us racing together when we were younger. And so it is kind of like, oh, what could have been. And I just feel like what's happening at the moment is just actually years of work coming together, and maybe it's meant to be. Don't know.
Mm.
Long way to go still. There's a lot of work to do, but I just feel like it's happening at the right time for me.
Mm. Almost sounds like those moments, of seeing people you used to compete against at the Olympic Games. That must have spurred you on a little bit. Did that take you, you know?
Yeah, it was strange because that was really, I think, yeah, maybe that did align with the time I went for my first park run. I need to go back and check the dates. But yeah, probably because I thought, wait, hold on, I'm pretty sure that I beat them when I was younger and they've gone on to the Olympics. So
Mm.
probably to an extent, I have so much respect for those girls as well for just going through that whole process. For me now, I feel I had a or have a career, took time off, kind of lived life, went over to the US and everything. Kind of in a way threw in the towel when it got hard, and they've continued to
Mm.
go through those tough years, through those injury years, through those years without sponsorship. And so it was actually just when I saw them at Tokyo, I was like, I'm so happy for them because they truly deserve it. And I know there's been not easy years in there. And I actually saw Alex Bell at the Telford 10K and we had a really nice chat about it. So it's
Wow,
great to see
awesome.
them as well.
Yeah, good stuff. And how's the rest of 2024 shaping up then? Obviously, we'll get on to this weekend just before we kind of finish the podcast. But obviously, post indoor season, what is the plan in terms of your races and stuff?
Yeah, so I need to get together a bit of a schedule. Like we've got some kind of skeletal schedule working at the moment, but it will be some European racing for sure. I think everything's just going to be leading up to trials at the end of June, which is gone from being something like, oh, hopefully I'll make it there and have a good race to actually that is going to be the race that we're aiming for. So
Mm.
got a bit of work to do before then. Got a big run this weekend, and hopefully um, that will trigger some more races off the back of that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's one thing to run the times. It's the harder bit to do well domestically, as I'm sure you guys know when you speak to the other athletes that come on. It's that seems to be the much harder bit. So
Mm.
it's great to see the times all coming, but it's all about championship racing as well.
Mm. Well, we were having a good conversation off air, and you were saying heading into this weekend, British champs. Obviously, you haven't done a championship race like this in a while, and you were just telling us that you need to, keep that same mentality you've had when you were starting back in this sport. And what that mentality was, I presume, just kind of having fun and seeing what comes and not overthinking things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the one hand, having a job and trying to do the whole running thing is a pain because
Mm.
you've just got not enough hours in the day, and what else could you be doing? But I do think there is something in it to the sense of you're not financially reliant on running and you're genuinely just doing it because you enjoy it and you want to. And that I think does bring a really good perspective to racing. And yeah, these last few races that I've been doing on the indoor tour in Dortmund, in Sweden, in France. Like I've just loved them and gone into all races just having a time, as bad as that sounds, or as strange as that might sound, because obviously you're putting myself through a lot of pain, but it's just been fun. And I hope I just do the same thing this weekend
Mm,
at championships. There's more on the line. There's a world indoor spot on the line. So there's rounds. So like it is going to be a totally different environment, but all I can do is do my best and go and have some fun as I've been doing.
mm.
Yeah,
You,
and how have you prepped specifically for that? Because obviously, I presume it's somewhat different to what you've done just going after these fast times. Like, how have you and Trevor kind of prepared the plan to ensure that you're ready for rounds and you're ready for kind of that more tactical race?
Yeah, exactly. So we've just over last weekend we just practiced for a few different situations of how the race might go. And that includes doing back-to-back days of training as well to know how to race between a heat and a final. Um, always got to work on speed. So there was definitely some speed work in there as well, but introducing it at times where you're already going to be fatigued. So yeah, it's really hard to know how it's going to go. Hard to know what the
mm.
way is to run it as well. But I guess it would be an exciting watch for you guys and everyone else on Sunday.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be fascinating, but you can take a bit of confidence from winning on the tour. And I think I just wanted to ask you before we finish, stepping onto the tour, winning those races, especially I remember that 3K you did and you're sort of pushing on past those Ethiopians. You've clearly, oh, I don't know, maybe you have. Have you felt kind of imposter syndrome? It must have been a bit daunting when you first lined up against all these internationals and they've had credentials over the last few years.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is bizarre when you turn up to these meets and like I'm not even in kit, everyone's in there, professional team gear. Especially I think that one in France, there was just the whole crew of some of the Kenyan and Ethiopian women. They're all lining up and doing their warm up in complete unison. Like it's very organized and it can be a bit intimidating, but I just again just tried to keep relaxed and had confidence in what I needed to do. I knew the lap times I needed to hit, and I think, yeah, they just went out really quickly
Mm.
and died. And then I just felt really good. So every race, I've learned something different. I've gained more confidence. And yeah, I think that has helped with the imposter syndrome. And now I'm just, yeah, setting no limits on myself at all.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
for sure. Well, we wish you all the best for this weekend, obviously, and the rest of the season. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much for having me, guys.
Fantastic to hear from Georgia Bell there, giving some great detail around kind of the time she took out from the sport, and then obviously previewing this weekend, which had just gone down. For those of you watching the British Champs and listening to this episode on the Sunday, so hopefully she kind of lived up to her own expectations with that. But Matt, what did you find the most interesting listening to Georgia? I think just for me the sheer talent this lady has to be able to take that time off in the sport and then come back at the level she has is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and we were talking. I think that it gets underappreciated because I think now people are starting to get familiar with her again. They're seeing her at that level, and they forget, where she was, and she was a talented junior, but it wasn't like she'd already run, low 4 minutes and then had 4 years away from the sport and then just needs to get back to that shape. She had run well, but I think she said herself after the podcast there when we were talking to her, she'd run sort of 4:16 and 2:3, which are they're good domestic times, but that's not getting you anywhere in the sport even today. Um, and so she's surpassed where she was, and I think you must be seriously talented. I think again, she's got a very good coach in Trevor Painter. Like they've obviously done wonders. But I think what's interesting with Georgia Bard, I think what people need to remember if they are in a similar position is she didn't get back into this sport saying she was going to go to the Paris Olympics. I think the minute you say that, it does build up a lot of pressure on yourself, and then you start to get very discouraged when you're a long way from achieving that goal because that must have seemed like an absolute mountain away.
Mm.
But she very quickly has found herself in a position where I think she will probably sneak a spot to Paris, and if she doesn't, I think she'll be in a position to hunt down a world's team the year after, and potentially go to Europeans this year as well. And I think it's, slowly but surely these dreams have sort of become a reality and been forced on her. But I think, yeah, she started back in this sport for all the right reasons. I think, again, she's another one who's working full time and having huge success. And I think she's going to have a crossroads soon, of what she chooses to do. Does she go full time athlete? Does she keep working? And that's a tricky decision when you've had such success working, but you know that to really reach that top 1%, which is where she wants to go, I think it's almost impossible to do full time working. To really, you can get so far at full time work, but if you're going to compete on a world level, you probably need to go full time.
Yeah, that's it. It's the difference between making the Olympics, isn't it, and then going further and being a world beater. I think
I
just
think that's it. You can
the
almost make
attention
a
to
championship
detail
team.
you see from these groups like the OAC are doing it. Like, well, even in her own group, Kelly Hodgkinson's doing it, for example, and that's why she's one of the best in the world. Is kind of going through those minute details. So, yeah, it's super interesting to see how her career unfolds from now, over the next year, and hopefully over the next few years as well. But Matt, not too many races for us to kind of preview this week. Obviously, National Cross is next weekend. I'm sure, well, Matt, I'm sure you're excited, but also those of you listening are excited because it's one of the most kind of anticipated races in terms of our listener base, I believe. I think most of you, if not all of you, attend and run, or at least have an interest in it. But just to let you know, we're going to basically provide you with kind of a full national cross country preview episode, that will come out sort of Wednesday next week, something like that, or
Tuesday, Wednesday.
midweek, we'll say. So yeah, look out for that, and that will kind of bring you start list, what you can expect, our thoughts on the national in general. So look forward to that. But apart from that, Matt, not really much else to chat about, really, is there?
No, and I think, on that as well, not only is it National Cross, I think there's going to be some British selections. There's going to be British selections for World Indoors next week, but there's also going to be British selections for the marathon at the Paris Olympic Games. So, because obviously after we get Seville out the way, we predict that British athletics will select 1 to 2 people on the men's and women's side to go perform in Paris. And so obviously on the men's side at the moment you've only got Emil, but by the time you're listening, it could have changed because we could see Phil Sessman have nabbed that time. And then on the women's side, God knows what they're going to do, who they're going to pick. But again, there's going to be lots to report. So I think that's why we feel we're going to have to smash out another episode Tuesday, Wednesday this coming week, just to summarize all that and give the national a worthy preview and actually get a chance to go through those fields on the men's and women's side.
Yeah, definitely. But hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode, and we'll see you very, very soon, sooner than usual. But thanks for listening as always.